my really close friend, Jam Martinez. He is here with us. He's going to be my cute little co-host today. Jam, do you want to kind of tell who you are, what you do?
Yeah. So I'm an interdisciplinary artist from Kearns, Utah, and I had the honor of meeting Anne Marie in Utah Valley University. We're on Synergy, which is the modern company, and we've worked together for the last couple of years. And I'm now in Texas at Sam Houston State University, where I got the opportunity to meet Barry Doss.
And then we have our lovely guest today. This is Barry Doss.
Hi, Anne Maria Barry.
Hi, Barry. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining in on our call today. I'm so excited. Jam has been speaking so highly of you. And what I'm doing here is I'm just excited to open up conversations with other artists that have either a huge resume or have just started, or I think the conversations right now are obviously kind of sensitive throughout artists. Like, we're all just kind of figuring out our way. And so thank you so much for just hopping on. And I was so excited when Jam kind of said that he said that you'd want to do this with us. And so thank you. I just really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I mean, I feel like it's both an honor and a responsibility. In the theme of what you were just mentioning, our current circumstances, I certainly feel fortunate doesn't begin to describe how I feel in terms of having my job and my station, as an educator in the arts. You're looking at someone right now who's very lucky. I mean, because there's a lot of people in the entertainment industry right now, professionally and in education, who are, they're dealing with unemployment. Businesses are closing, production companies are folding. It's kind of crazy. So, of course, Jam is one of our students, and he knows what the jive is down here at SHSU Dance, and we're still making it happen. And I'm very, very proud of my colleagues and the College of Arts and Media and our university as a whole for finding what I think has been a really good balance of both, the progressive need to keep going and the conservative values that say we must put certain protocols in place to be careful and safe and protect one another while we fight the good fight of keeping the work going. So yeah, with that all said, welcome to Sam Houston State University's dance.
I'm so excited.
Stop.
I love it. That's amazing.
You can see we're in the throes of stuff right now.
Lots of pinks, I see.
We also had the weirdness of and craziness of the Texas snowpocalypse that recently happened.
Yes.
And
yep. That was wild. I heard all about it. Jam told me all about it.
We won't go into that real deep because I just don't even want to go there. But I will say this, obviously, we all lost a week of work, and not just a week of work, but even a week where we really couldn't be in communication with one another because there was no electricity. Some people were dealing with the fact that they had no water. And of course, when you have people who have no water, you really don't want to be bugging them about their emails. So we had a week go dark. And that's crazy, like unprecedented down here because, a snow day is something that might happen and we can deal with it. But, I'm sure you've heard all of the stories about Texas drivers and ice and snow. And
yeah.
So for that to happen to us was crazy. But then when we came back, there was a commitment to just keep the calendar intact and push and make it work and not miss any deadlines in terms of like concerts, productions. And so everyone is on, we're hitting our mark, but it was a lot of work. No, Jam? It was pretty hard.
It was definitely Texas keeping us on our toes.
Intense.
Showing us what we're capable of even more. So we definitely...
Exactly.
For those of you who are unfamiliar with Barry Doss's work, he's a native Texan Barry received his BA in theater with a minor in fashion design from TCU, graduating with honors. After a European tour of the musical Hair as a performer, he moved to New York City, where he worked in wardrobe, costume design on and off Broadway, in costume shops, TV pilots, and independent films, as well as numerous Broadway musicals and plays. So
Wow.
it's such an honor to have you on the show. And Barry, is there anything you'd like to add to that, or tell people that you're kind of working on now?
No, I mean, uh, because having reviewed your questions, I don't want to go off on a tangent and lose time. I mean, that pretty much sums it up. It's like every artist is asked to give a bio. Sometimes it's the long version, sometimes it's the short version. But yeah, long story short, started in Texas, studied theater, bounced through the Midwest of Indiana, working for a modern dance company called Dance Kaleidoscope, landed in New York City and worked primarily on Broadway for many years. Also did some television.
Wow.
And then I got a text message from a friend saying, hey, there's this costume shop at Sam Houston State University in Huntsville back in Texas. Would you have any interest? And I was like, well, yeah. And I got the phone call and set up, and it was really sort of a, you want me to do what, where, really? I can come home to Texas and keep doing this thing that I do, but do it with students. And they're like, yeah, could you please come down here and show us how to do it? And so I landed at Sam Houston, and the cool thing was they had built this amazing new costume shop when they built the new Performing Arts Center. I think it's about 12 years old now, but I've been here for over 7.
Wow.
So oh my gosh, maybe they're closer to 15. I don't know. It pre-existed me, but it had been here for a couple of years, and they were trying to function out of it. Or they were functioning out of it. They were using the closet, they were using the space to do things, but no costumes were really being designed here or executed. And so I was asked to, take over the management of the shop, but from a costume designer's perspective. So we actually changed the title of the job. They changed the title of the job from costume shop manager, to dance costume design specialist, with the job description including the management of the shop. And so I'm sort of I wear many hats under this one title to make this work. But it's not a small costume shop, but it's not enormous. But one thing is for sure, we absolutely inhabit the space with not just the things that we need, fabrics and supplies, thread, machines, the costume closet and the garments that we have, but also the potential of work. Like I was saying, it's like, it's a little messy right now, but it's actually more organized than what can happen depending upon any given moment when we are in full out production. But the students are amazed at how quickly I can get it back to a neutral place in terms of cleaning it up and reorganizing. So yeah, I was like, yeah, I think I'm your man. I think I can show you how to do this, because it was a great test for me, because it was a test that I would not have stopped and put myself through, where I was given the opportunity to stop working as a professional and from a completely different perspective, that of an instructor or a teacher, reassess what it is that I know and be very clear that that is a process. The cool thing about it is if you've been paying attention and you've been committed to your art and your craft, your technique, whatever it is, you just know what the answer is in a split second. When someone says how, you go, this is how.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you know that? Because I've been doing it for a very long time, and it's just second nature. And if and you learn along the way. It's just that this was a very unique opportunity. I think that there are more dance programs at universities in the country who are starting to consider this kind of approach to costume, and there are some that are actually doing it. I would really like to know who else is doing it. I would love to this could be a good idea for you guys. Let's find out what other universities are have their own dance costume shop or are doing this. I mean, I would love to have the greater conversation, because sometimes I feel like I'm doing it in a vacuum down here, that we're just doing it,
Right.
But yeah, it's cool.
That's amazing. Thank you for all of that. Thank you, Jam. I kind of going off with this like bigger picture more conversation. I think a good question maybe to start off with, or I guess just a little segue into a question. Barry, I actually moved to New York this June because it's my biggest dream to perform on stage, to be on Broadway one day. And
wow.
because of the pandemic, nothing was open. You know, everybody said things are gonna start opening in the fall. That was last year and it never happened. And so I had to come back home. And so I've been in this kind of rut of like, and I love that you said like you've been like super fortunate because you've had to you're able to keep your job. And there's been so many people who haven't and who have lost their jobs. So I think just kind of the bigger picture, like overall, even past this pandemic, what made you decide that this being an artist, what you are as a costume designer and all of the beautiful things that you are is what you wanted to do? Like, what is your why? What's keeping you going even through these hard times? Like, even for me, I have to ask myself that, like, what is my why? Why did I choose this? And why do I keep going? And why do I keep thinking that it's hopefully going to be better and that one day I can make it on that stage? Or what's your big why?
Well, that's a big question.
It's a big
And
question.
just sort of like went in many different directions.
It's true.
Um,
Pick one, whatever you want.
So let's just start with the original why, you know, and all I know, because that was, you know, on the questionnaire that you guys forwarded me at first. You know, as a kid, I was drawn to creative. I was drawn to art. I was drawn to theater, singing. My grandparents were gospel and bluegrass singers. My father was a welder by trade. My mother did hair, you know, and if you start listening to this, it's like, oh my gosh, they sound like it's like a troupe, you know, but the truth, there was nothing theatrical about my family. They were just blue collar working class people. My mother took us to church. Uh, and I grew up singing in the choir. There's a theatrical nature to church and performance that is there, you know. And then in high school, I discovered I discovered theater my sophomore year in high school by doing a school play. Now we had done school plays before, but not under the canopy of like, this is theater, you know. It's like, we're going to, you know, third grade, we're going to do Rumpelstiltskin, you know. And it was like, you're still learning to read and reading from books, you know, but like, to be introduced to theater as a concept in high school sort of changed things for me. As a child, up to that point, I was very interested in drawing. My grandmother paid for some art supplies for me. My mother and father paid for some painting lessons for me. I took some piano lessons as a kid. I wanted to take some dance lessons, but it was too rural of an area. There were no opportunities for boys to study. So there was just, the point is, it's like, there's no one thing. There's no one moment. It's a thing that's happening and evolving, and people are self-discovering and emerging. And that's what happens to children too, you know, and depending upon, you know, what they're exposed to, you know, they'll find a path. The funny thing is if you ask my father, my father would say, I have absolutely no idea how he ended up where he ended up. Because in his mind, it's like, I should have become an engineer and gone to Texas A&M, because but there you have it. It's like, it's enigmatic. It's like, you don't always know. The artist journey is unusual. But I mean, I have students here that often are like, you know, my mother is an artist. And so they show up with a very strong, clear perception of what the art world is and can be. So started doing theater in high school and then decided to study it in college. But by my senior year in high school, watching my mother sew, watching my grandmother sew as a child, you know, I was making costumes in high school. And I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be Fred Astaire. You know, I couldn't get the dance lessons. You know, the dream changed along the way. But I went to school on an acting scholarship. I decided to minor in fashion design, as Jam mentioned, when I went to Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. I got a scholarship in acting, but I walked in with this little portfolio of costume designs from high school, and they were like, oh, let's take you to the costume shop. And so I ended up spending a lot of time in the costume shop and then getting a minor in fashion. So I got a Bachelor of Arts degree as opposed to a BFA. It's a little more academic and less conservatory type, fewer acting classes, more languages, the opportunity for a minor. And it worked for me. And it gave me a way to legitimize my costume and clothing studies at TCU, when there wasn't actually a specific program. Now here at Sam Houston, in our theater department, you actually can study. They have a degree that focuses on theater technology or something of that nature, but you can choose lighting design, costume design, scenic design, and then you have a specialty in your degree. There wasn't anything quite like that at TCU. So the option was the BA opened up more electives for me to construct a path of study. And it shot me out on the other side with the capability of pursuing work in costume design and wardrobe. For many people, my mother, she's like, well, of course, it makes sense to her. But even my grandmother, who was one of the people I learned to sew from, once expressed to me her dismay and sadness that I didn't become an artist, a painter, because she's the one who bought those art supplies for me. And I was like, but can you not see how everything that I did as a child led to this specialty that I get to do as an artist, and how happy it makes me, because it fuses all of those things together that were part of my journey as a young artist.
Absolutely.
Now it's not as cool as it used to be.
Whatever.
You swing a measuring tape in Times Square and you'll knock a costume designer in the head. It's like they're everywhere. Costume designers everywhere, fashion designers, which is cool. It's back. It's cool again. It's being done in different ways. A lot more technology involved than when I was coming up. My education is very well. First of all, it was a liberal arts education, classical studies of theater, and it just. I think I lost the point on that, but
no, that's great. No, that was perfect. Yeah, I think, well, like you said, I think there's a lot of reasons why. And I think that you said a lot of those building blocks that made you the artist that you are today. And that's exactly how we become the artists that we are. I think another interesting question that's kind of like a different subject here, but I think that I really want Jam to talk about it too, because he has an opinion about it. And I also want to know your opinion about it. Do you believe in this stigma that artists are starving artists? Do you think that's true? And how you get?
I don't think it's true. I think it's a choice. And especially in the 21st century. Let's face it, we're not in the 19th century anymore. You know what I mean? It's like it's not even the early 20th century. To be an artist is a different thing. It's much more mainstream. It has emerged as a way of being, a life philosophy, a contribution to society, an aspect of our consciousness. We all know what it is to be an artist. And there's opportunity for people to expand their minds, learn more, educate themselves, work on specific techniques, because it's a modern world. That's what's kind of crazy with you guys' generation. And I even thought it when we were younger, but it's like the amount of information that is out there, the amount of possibility, there's like, I was even thinking this recently too, like cruising through my Netflix or my Stars, and I'm like, wow, this is so different from when I was a kid, and it was like one channel, or 3 channels, and then satellites came and dishes, and it's like trying to get more. I don't recall ever hearing the word content in terms of network programming or anything like that. Now, I'm not saying that it wasn't a word. I'm not a broadcast person, you know, I'm not a mass comm kind of person. But yeah, maybe content was something that like producers talked about, you know, in meetings and stuff, but now it's like on a mainstream level as customers of, you know, the content, we're actually having that conversation, and you can literally, you can choose your programming.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty darn cool, because if you can't, if there's no choice built into programming, then it's just programming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're, you know, a specific perspective is being sort of forced upon you if you don't have the choice. And the amazing thing is there's all these platforms for content for all kinds of different filmmakers, journalists, documentary makers, artists, to put their work out there, and then for people to pick and choose what it is that they want to spend their time thinking about and observing, you know. So you could get into a political conversation about that too, but I definitely, that's not the point of this today's conversation. But I think you get what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like we're all kind of, we all have the ability to choose the narrative we want to work with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I kind of have similar beliefs when it comes to the whole starving artist thing, is that there are, you know, millionaire artists and they're broke lawyers. And it doesn't necessarily define your wealth. I don't think anybody's knocking on our doors like, give us your art. You know, we have this thing that with artists that like this persona that it matters so much, and not to tear down the artist, but it doesn't, in the sense that you can be whatever you want to be, and you can choose to live whatever life that you want to live. And like you said, kind of going off of your idea, we live in this generation where we have so much technology and so many opportunities that the previous generations didn't have. So at this point, excuse me, at this point, it's now a choice. If we're not going out and putting work out, or we're not producing, we have so many ways to produce and so many ways to network and connect, that, yeah, we kind of do ourselves a disservice as artists if we're not actually producing. But again, I also think that building wealth and being an artist, there's no reason that can't go hand in hand. And you don't necessarily need starving artists. I wouldn't say that the world is, you know, against us in this time.
No, no, there could be some conservative, you know, shrieks, particularly maybe in parents when they're working with their young their student who's about to go off to college. Are you sure you want to study dance? Or you could get a sensible business degree.
Yeah, it's huge.
You know, but another thing, in terms of the starving artist paradigm, it's a bit antiquated. So it's very interesting to me that you guys are even still having the conversation, because it's like if you look at the starving artist as sort of an archetype, you could also compare it, especially in history, because it was happening at the same time, to the struggling inventor. You know, it's like there are plenty of stories in the history of the Industrial Revolution and into the 20th century, age of technology, stories of inventors, you know, who were, you know, mixing things up, or they had an idea. The invention of the sewing machine itself is riddled with like competition and, you know, revolts by the Luddites and, you know, things of that nature. And the point is it's like in that theme of like, you know, mixing up plastic in your garage in Silicon Valley, it's like, you know, we also know that there are great minds who have invented things that have become like the Steve Jobs. And it's like, those are hugely successful, hugely impactful lives, you know, from the same paradigm. We've broken those paradigms, I think. It's like, there's no reason why an artist should starve. No.
Yeah.
No, that's part of the history and the coming to, but of where we are. But I don't think that that's set in stone. You know, I think it's something that happened. Absolutely. You know, and now we keep going. The other thing is this, though, too. The same way that well, the same way that your art cannot be defined by the money that you make, you know, or the
Right.
what does that mean?
Right.
Also, you cannot define success. You cannot weigh success in dollar signs.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
now at the same time, it's like, it's part of it,
Right.
you know, but it's like, sometimes it takes time in the life of an artist for them to be able to see that and to see where their greater work has stuck and has stood the test of time, to be able to say, wow, yeah, I did that, you know, and it's still doing its thing and affecting audiences and telling story and being a part of, you know, the greater mechanics of the artistic experience going forward. So that's a huge thing to be able to say. And it also informs your success, because it's like the better work that you do, it also will help you with the next thing that you get. You know what I mean? So it becomes more like a perpetual instrument. It's like, it's just perpetuating itself. That's one of the things too, is that, like, I think one of the keys for me was learning to let go of the control of everything. And that in order for me to feel successful, I felt like I needed to do this and this and have this and have this by this time at this age. And
Yes.
along the way, it helped me maybe hit some marks, but it also like tore me apart when I wasn't able to get where I felt like I should be. I think it also, what's that?
Of what success was based on
Right, where I should be at this time right now, what I have at this time right now. And also, but that's what I wanted to do. I'm doing this other thing over here. What I really wanted to do was that thing over there, but I didn't get that. And I'm over here. And it's like, what's great is that you're here.
Yeah.
You know, and learning to be where you are, you know, in the moment, you know, and totally embracing that. You know, not being disgruntled or dismayed. I just recently had a conversation with a student, and she was like, I think I may stay a year in Huntsville and wait for my friends to graduate. And is that bad? And I'm like, no, it's not bad. It's hard. It means that you're thinking about the reality of the situation.
Yes.
And I said, the main thing for you is to do not be dismayed. Do not make a choice about your life and what you're going to do in any encapsulated period of time, and then be dismayed at your choice.
Yes.
Stand in your choice, because that's really the only thing that is more real than the idea or the notion of what you should have or be. That is an idea, whereas a choice is real. It is a defined moment of focused activity. What am I going to do at this time? And now you can begin to shape that. And some people go, oh my God, another 5-year plan. You know, it doesn't have to be that, but I just really think that it's important for us all as human beings, but particularly as artists, to really focus on now, the here and now. Because then we will be able to unravel the past the way we need to and create the future as we envision it. The more we focus now.
Wow, that was amazing. I feel like we could just end that there. I kind of going off of what you just said, I think kind of diving into that deeper, working on the now, what are some things now that you're doing in your now, whatever that is? How do you keep those artistic what are your artistic habits? Like what help you keep inspired throughout the day when maybe this isn't necessarily like me and a lot of people I feel like that are in a now that it's like, I wish I was maybe in a different place, but how do I find, or not just me, but artists, how do we find these artistic habits?
Well, for one thing, for me specifically, as a non-dancer,
Right,
but someone who loves dance, but as, you know, a theater artist and costume technician and designer that can like work towards the collaborative effort or in service to the form of dance, I'm very lucky because dance has a tendency to do just that. You know, it's very rare that you're working with a choreographer who's like, you know, especially in the modern world, it's like, we're going to do this thing that they did back, you know, in Shakespeare's time.
Yeah.
Um, so I find that particularly modern dancers have a tendency to really want to try to find that moment that is now.
Yeah.
You know, they're very much trying to, that's sort of the dilemma often, the dancer's dilemma. How do I dance the dance of this very moment? Or how do I create that? Where's my individual uniqueness right now? Just coming out of me. I said to a group of students recently, grad students and some seniors in a lecture, that, you know, remember that dancers are one of the only artists that can actually go into a completely empty room with absolutely nothing and create their art. You know, there's there's them and there's singers. Singers can do that too, and maybe, but even, you know, even the visual artist needs the pencil and the paper or the stick and the sand, something else. Whereas dance is something that emanates from them from within and without, and it is expressed through the canvas of the human body.
Mhm.
So it's, I think it's one of the purest expressions of right now. So I'm not sure that every dancer gets that yet, but that's part of their journey and their understanding, you know, and that's, I'm talking specifically about young dancers, but I do believe the good ones figure that out. But in terms of staying in the moment myself, it's real boring, to be honest with you. It's real boring. I I use calendars. I use lists. But another thing that I actively do, the crafts person in me and the old school artist, I don't just rely on email. I uh, I do my rounds. I walk. I actively engage person to person with my colleagues. And I don't even, I quit making appointments too. I just walk up. I just walk up to their doors and I'm like, do you have 3 minutes? And they're like, oh, sure. Why not? Because I think they realize too that it's like, it's so much easier to have the conversation in conversation. I hate having conversations via email. It's like, I'm like, I understand the importance of email and I understand how certain things have to be committed to email, but I don't believe that the process of collaboration must unfold documented in an email. And sometimes you work with artists, they're so caught up in the documentation, and I'm not sure that that's necessarily their art that's informing that. And it's like, can we just have coffee? Can we just sit down and talk about this? I don't want to have to type all this out, you know?
Yeah.
So I do that. I still remain a very engaged person to person kind of collaborator. And then of course I follow up with email. And that keeps me in the now. It also helps, it helps my colleagues to accelerate their process, and to get in the moment with me and to get into the conversation of, well, what are we doing? What does this collaboration look like? What is your vision? You know, I am not like, tell me your vision, send. I'm like, tell me your vision. Look in my eyes and tell me what you're thinking. I think one of the things that I try to do is to make sure that at any given time, I'm multitasking. I'm a multitasker. And that I don't go down too deep of a rabbit hole in any one direction, but instead sort of keep all the pots going simultaneously so that the bigger organism is growing and moving forward, and nothing's like, you know, becoming dusty, cluttered. So if there is a mess, or if it appears to be cluttered, it's actually in flux. It's active clutter. Things are happening. Energy is being put forth. I don't like it when things begin to become stagnant. I I don't mind, you know, a stacked shelf as long as it's an active shelf.
Yeah. And
You
with
know,
some artists, you know, we're looking to stay busy, and other artists like yourself, you do so many projects and you multitask, and I have never seen you not working. What about for those artists that are so busy? How do you keep from burning out? Or how do you stay so active, but also so engaged and find liveliness in an art form that you've been doing for over 20 years?
oh, okay. Well, the burnout part, I I have 4 dogs and a cat and a partner. And when I need to unplug, I just rub a dog's belly.
Yeah.
And then that makes everything okay.
Yeah.
And then I can go to sleep, whatever, you know, go for a walk with my dogs, because I'm not honestly, most of my activity that keeps me active in life is just the activity of running the studio. I walk a lot, I stand up, I sit down, I carry things. There's a very physical aspect to costume work and wardrobe work, moving things around, you know. You stand, you sit, you're working with your hands, your arms, you know. So it's not like I'm sedentary.
Yeah.
So I like that about my, you know, my job, that I do get to do different things and move around. It makes it difficult sometimes because there's sort of a built-in expectation that academics are like sitting in their offices at their computers waiting for the next email to come through. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I check my email and then I go into the studio, into the workroom.
Yeah.
If there's something that's really important, there's a door and it has a window on it. And all you have to do is look through the window to see that I'm in this room. So you can come in here and talk to me, you know? So I do encourage meetings and checking in, and some colleagues are more into that and others are like, they lean on the email, you know. But yeah, it's a very active job, so I get a lot of physical activity, but it's also stressful. Sometimes they're long hour days. You know, sometimes it stretches of days and days before I get a real break. But I don't know, I think that I've been doing it so long, I know how to pace myself.
Yeah.
And I've even made the mistake of pushing myself too far, that like it, you know, it made me unwell. So I've learned that lesson. So it's like, no, 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 no. You have to rest. You have to get your rest. You know, I am a bit of a coffee freak. But even that I'm trying to temper these days and back off the caffeine. So yeah, it's exciting. What do you mean? It's like I get to create costumes for dance. It's like I don't have to work that hard for it to be fun. It's
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
know, it's intrinsically sort of like, oh, great, we're the people who get to make dance, and it's
Yeah.
legit. People are learning, young people are learning. They're not just learning how to be good artists, they're also learning how to be good problem solvers, how to be good managers of budgets. You know, there's all kinds of things to be learned within the dynamic of dance production.
Amen.
It can be applied in other ways.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that. I feel like we forget that. Like, oh yeah, shoot, I get to just dance all day. Like I shouldn't have to feel like there should be, or fear that there's going to be burnout, even though there are some days that we do
Yeah.
feel that way, or years or whatever, where we feel like we're, you know, burnt out, but ultimately we keep coming back. Right. And it's for that same reason of, look how blessed I am. I get to do
Right.
that today.
And when you get to the you know, when you get to the part of your career where, you know, the professional work is really happening, if you're interested in Broadway, I don't know if you're an equity performer or not, but I'm sure you
Yeah,
understand.
I was trying to get all that figured out when I moved out.
Right. So that's a goal for you. And like when you get to that place and you're working professionally, whether it's union or non-union, but certainly I'm a big champion of the union
Okay.
construct, because it's, you know, it's a lot of people that come together to represent one another, so that as an individual, you know, you're not all alone, you know, because there is a common goal of there, you know, there's no one man show. It's all collaboration and many people are doing the work. And so everyone needs to be compensated fairly. But when it gets to that point of managing that aspect, it's hard to go back. in any way. You know, it's like you may find yourself at some point in your life doing work that's helping build you as an artist in your younger days that maybe you didn't make so much money. But then once you get to the point where you do start making money, it's hard to go back. It's hard to trade off. And so when the person approaches you and says, I have a low budget film that I'm working on and I want you to design it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, I used to do those things, but like, and I'm busy now. So
Right. You're
like,
absolutely right.
it's like, I don't think I can take that job. I got, 4 dogs to feed, and it's like, and I at a different place.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm too good. It's just what kind of system have you created for your life, and how are you going to sustain that? And money absolutely becomes part of that. Get to whatever level you are, it's not always just smooth sailing. It's like, no, you got a lot of dials and levers and things that you have to do, wheels to turn to keep it all going, and that's, often the math of it. And it's funny, it's like, even in costume, I have had students when, the higher math starts unraveling, they're like, there's math in costume design? Of course there's math in costume design.
Yeah.
There's math in
Surprise!
so like, get used to it. You're gonna have to do the math.
Yeah.
And that's how, that's a bit what life is like.
Yeah.
As artists too, often the payoff, the income, whatever that stuff is, it's doing just that. It's coming from over here and it's coming from over there. And for a lot of people in life, it's just coming. It's a very direct line.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's just different. But for some people, and they don't understand how we as artists can deal with that kind of cuckoo, like all these different spoons and different pots and stuff. But like, that's an exciting life for an artist that's trying to make art, it means you're actually connected. And in the theater, I sometimes, there was one year that I had like 7 jobs officially on paper from 7 different Broadway shows, where I did work, and I made a lot of money that year. But I go to a bank and I put an application in for a mortgage or something, and they review my application. They're like, what is up with this man? He had 7 jobs in 1 year. What did he do? Was he fired, 6 times? What is going on here? We can't give this guy money. He had 7 jobs in 1 year. What kind of loser is this? Who goes through 7 jobs? And it's like, no. You don't understand. I'm in show business. That's a good year. And they're like, they're like, our committee we don't know how that works. We need 1 good, solid job. And it's like, yeah, that's not the way show business works.
No.
Yeah.
So it even comes down to like figuring out like, how are you going to deal with your money? What institutions can you work with? Credit unions, there's the Actors Federal Credit Union in New York City that I bank with, and then they understand it's like, oh, this dude was on 4 tours this year, and they're like, that's great, but it's just a completely different paradigm, and so learning the business is also very important, and you'll be learning that in New York as you continue and work toward your equity.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It'll happen.
I don't know about you, but I just feel so inspired with what you're saying. I think overall, you're saying that no matter where you are, things are going to come. And even, yes, you can like write on paper, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make all these plans to hit this and this and this and this in this year or next year or 5 years down the road. But I love that you're saying, or maybe you're implying that, things will just come, but you got to work for it, but they will also come, right? I don't know. Is that's
well, the thing is too, is as the quote goes, life is what happens when we're busy making plans,
right?
And it's like, now that doesn't mean stop making plans. It's just like, don't be attached to the outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
There is an element of, I don't know, the word non-control comes. It's like, you don't have control of everything. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I worked for a curtain maker in New York City named Mary Bright. the late Mary Bright. She was a high-end architectural curtain maker and worked with major interior designers, architects, um, celebrities like Martha Stewart, uh, Cole, what's Kenneth? No, not Kenneth Cole. It doesn't matter. Fashion designers, etc. But she used to say when we were working on curtains, which are like mostly straight lines and rectangles, which was I learned a lot of stuff about engineering and fabric, but I got real tired of rectangles real fast. How big is the rectangle this time? But Mary Bright used to say, we strive for perfection.
Yeah.
And there's a distinction there, because in the in that statement, it doesn't say we expect perfection, but instead we strive for perfection. And if you're striving for perfection, then something good, something really good should emerge, even if it's imperfect, or even if it's not exactly what you envisioned or what you were going for. But I also have to say to you that that's a very liberal thing for me to say as a designer, because often the nature of design is to try to envision it and then execute it as precisely as possible, particularly in a situation where certain costume designers are giving their vision over to technicians, and it's their job to create exactly what the designer has drawn. And by the way, that drawing is based on a conversation of collaboration with another person called the director. And so now the line, of command and process in achieving that thing grows greater and greater. Then you get to the technician, then you get to the dyer, then you get to the stitcher, and it just goes through a whole thing. And it's like, it has to come back to this, and it's being interpreted, because as real as the drawing is, it's still an idea.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess for me, the biggest enemy for me when it comes to breaking that process down is just laziness. I feel like if any artist or technician is being focused and, bringing themselves 100% to the moment, then something appropriate and magnificent will emerge.
Love that. Last question to end our little session here. Thank you again for joining us. It's meant the world to us that you've brought some time, made some time for us. As young artists, or if you were to talk to yourself as a younger artist, what would be something that you wish that you would have heard from somebody, or that you would have told yourself that you didn't know? As young artists now, what advice would you give?
Oh,
It's also a big question, but
not going to like the answer.
I hit it. Give us.
It's okay. Let us know. We got to hear it. Tell us the honesty.
Open an IRA.
Oh. Okay.
Start getting those funds in order now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
As soon as possible.
Does it matter whether it's a regular IRA or a Roth IRA?
That's a conversation to have with your financial advisor.
Okay.
But I do think, and if it's not an IRA, it's something else, but an IRA is a good place to start. And right behind that, I would say, educate yourself on health benefits and figure out how you're going to get them as fast as you can.
Wow.
Okay.
Awesome.
So it's like the greatest advice. Yeah. Because everything else is, if you have those things covered, then you have created a safe place for yourself to express and be as an artist. Take care of yourself and take care of your future in some way that is just happening, and with banking and accounting, direct deposit and things like that, it's not difficult to figure out a system, and then, again, I'm a pro-union person, so I sort of feel like if you have goals of mainstream work, you know, working within the mainstream, like if you want to work on Broadway, or if you want to work in film, major motion pictures, you know, then do the research on the required unions and figure out how you're going to become a member as soon as possible. And when you find that out, and they're like, and you find out that's like, well, they want $3,000 for me to get in. This is my advice: find the $3,000, pay for it, because it's going to pay for itself in astronomical ways financially in your future if you can line up, if you can align yourself with a union. Now, that being said, there are plenty of artists out there, plenty of theater artists who are working non-union, and it's just a choice. It's just, for me, it's one of the wisest things that I did, because I feel like my union membership within my professional years protected me in ways that I might not have been able to do. Now, that doesn't make it the right way to do it. It's just a way, but it's an American way, and it's a good way. So anyway, best of luck
Thank
to
you.
New York. Good for you that you're still gonna do it. That's what's gonna take that. You got to be those who are gonna go and do it, you know, so go and do it.
Thank you.
Jam's gonna be down here in Huntsville doing it.
Absolutely, and it's just been such an honor over the past year to get to know you and to have the conversations that we've had. So knowing Anne-Marie, I just knew this would be a great opportunity for you guys to meet each other and get some words of wisdom. So we really appreciate your time today, and everything that you've shared has been amazing.
Thank you. So grateful.
And a quick disclaimer, I am here alone in the dance costume shop, which is why I am not wearing a mask. But I do have my mask.
You're fine.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
You as well. We'll see you.